I've never had a family member, not one time, it's a good idea. Not one time. Anyone of all my business ever said, you should go for that. It's a good time. Never been the case.
They were wrong on the Ring doorbell, which is massive. They were wrong about so many other things. And then they invested a lot of money in things that didn't work, like that sweet balls. Like, what was that about? So I think even if you have people that could be experts, they could be wrong.
But I think that the number one mistake business owners make is they start to succeed and then they go buy the boat or they go get the new car. And it's like, no, you should, like you said, reinvest the money into your business for a while.
Some of these corporate environments are so structured where you might feel like you're making decisions, but it's really, you've been given it's like the Matrix. You've been given two pills. Take this one or this one.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, feel free to visit our website, ggthefranchiseguide.com. Click on that, book a call. Love to chat with you, answer your questions in regards to business ownership, franchise ownership. If you're potentially a good fit, book a 20-minute call with me today. There's no cost, no commitment. And I would love to help you out in any way we can. Today, I'm joined by industry experts who have helped countless families build franchise empires that last. Whether you're planning to pass your business to the next generation or building your first franchise with legacy in mind, you'll get real-world stories and expert insights right here. Let's dive into what really takes to create a franchise that just doesn't just survive, but thrives for generations.
And what's going on, guys?
I'm looking forward to that. Merging the shows, which is kind of cool. Meeting of the minds.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we've also got a special guest over there, Mia. Hello, Mia.
Not feeling well. It's take Mia to work day.
That's awesome. You get the freedom as a business owner to do that, right?
Yeah, no one's going to fire me, so that's a plus.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to fire your boss to then become the boss. Well, today we're going to be talking about, utilizing advisors or, not utilizing advisors and kind of the difference when thinking about starting a business. I think I'll kick this off. Obviously, you need to talk to trusted people about anything that you're thinking about doing when it comes to getting into a business. My advice, though, is to talk to people that are in that industry. So if you're thinking about getting into the technology industry, talk to a technology advisor. Thinking about getting into franchising, talk to a franchise advisor, not your neighbor. Not your, friend that tells you that, they don't think franchising makes sense because they heard on TV that, X, Y, Z happened. And I would tell you that where I like to think about this is I'm on my maybe fourth business of starting, and I've never had a family member, not one time, it's a good idea. Not one time. Anyone of all my business ever said, you should go for that. It's a good time. Never been the case. And I'll kind of end with, I was thinking about this, Sarah Blakely. She started Spanx. And she actually said that when she had the idea, she didn't tell anyone for a year. She built the idea, but she knew people, she told them they would start to bring her down. So she had to work on her own, get that momentum, get that confidence. What do you guys think about that?
You actually did that to me. I had a business idea a long time ago. When we first started our consulting business, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I was like, we just need to make a site where we sell FDDs and has like every single FDD on it. And then after we sold the business, I did it and it worked.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't listen to Dan.
Don't listen to me. He applied to me.
I was like, why didn't I do that earlier? But it definitely was a massive undertaking at the time. But I think what we were talking about with Giuseppe was with the Shark Tank. And you were telling us about something, and that's how even the sharks are wrong.
Yeah, listen, you never know exactly what's going to work out. And I think just to add to what you guys were saying, sometimes it's people don't mean anything negative by it. It's more of they're being cautious, right? They don't want you to lose money or there's a big risk. Believe it or not, my first business, my accountant told me I couldn't make money with the franchise. You know what happened? I made money with the franchise and I fired the accountant. So hopefully he's not listening. We're not going to name names, but they look at the numbers. They don't look at necessarily the big picture of the actual business itself. So yeah, I completely get it. But when you do ask for advice, you do have to be very of who you're asking for.
And where are their motivations coming from?
Sure.
I know that in my 11 years of being in franchising, I've never heard a financial planner, no offense to financial planners, but a lot of times I've seen people, they get close to buying a business. They go to their financial planner to get their financial planner's opinion. And again, I like to think most people operate with integrity. I'm sure they do. But keep in mind, the money that you have in your retirement account or in your investment accounts, if you're talking to your financial planner about taking them out, they make a percentage fee on the money that's in there.
Right.
The more that is in there, the more that they can manage and the more that they can make you, but also the more that they can make themselves. And so a lot of times they're not going to be motivated either to say, yeah, I think it's a great idea to take out half the revenue stream of my business out of the account so you can go do another business.
Meanwhile, they own their own business anyway. Yeah. Offense to financial planners. I am offended.
It's and that's part of assets under management, and it's hard to control a startup versus you're buying mutual funds. There's data. There's a lot more history. Yeah, I've experienced that as well. So what about Shark Tank? Do we have some examples of some deals that?
Well, but imagine if you were like, well, let me call Mark Cuban, and you had his ear, and you told him about an idea. They were wrong on the Ring doorbell, which is massive. They were wrong about so many other things, and then they invested a lot of money in things that didn't work, like that sweet balls. Like, what was that about? So I think even if you have people that could be experts, they could be wrong. You just need to trust your instinct, and the secret ingredient in a business is you.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to understand, is like if you want to, get in shape or lose weight, you have to go through pain to get there, right? If you want to make a business successful, you have to go through sacrifice. And so you're going to have to, like you said, get your spouse involved because they have to be on board with the sacrifice that
they're going to be sacrificing too. It may be no income the first year. It may be no vacation the first year, or there's going to be a shift in lifestyle. Absolutely. They have to know they have to set. This is the expectation, but the goal is to, go on more vacations, retire early, spend more time with the family. So I think if you set the expectation, they're on board then, but ultimately everyone has to be on board or it's going to be a rocky road.
I got a question. What's this trend or thing that I feel like I've been seeing, which is people that are looking at buying a franchise business with an expectation of like, they have to make this crazy profit their first year, which by the way, to me, crazy profit is anything that's like a good amount of money. Like you're trying to replace your salary or something in the first year. I've never really seen businesses usually do that. So, but what are you guys seeing where people come with those expectations? Has something changed in the kind of economy or the generation? Like, what is that kind of driving?
I think people expect the immediate return, right? They want to go viral in the first post on social media. So I think it's where it's coming from. I always tell people that first year it's a learning curve. You've never owned a business. You've never hired people. So this is all new. You're learning something new, but to be matching the income you were making immediately, you're building something. So to have that expectation, I always take a step back and say, realistically, any profit. So even if there is that kind of profit, you want to reinvest in the right team, in the right systems, because this is not a business that you hope to grow 10% a year. This is something that's going to be growing exponentially. That's something I've experienced in my business, and my first year, reinvested everything back. I didn't take a dime out, but I also set reserves aside for that. So I think it's this instant gratification. I have to make money right away, and it's okay if you don't match your salary the first year. You should really be investing in those systems, or else you're starving the business. You're pulling too much out. You're not hiring the right people or not paying them what they're owed, and you're not investing in the technology as well.
Yeah, but people say that, but they're still taking a salary, and they're saying the business isn't profitable.
And they're pulling their salary, and they're
their salary. I mean, I think it just depends. Some people can hit the ground running and some people don't. There's hurdles that you can't predict. No one has a crystal ball.
Right.
Like COVID happened, people that own certain businesses were affected, and other people, like if you were selling masks, you killed it, or gloves or whatever, right?
Right.
So it just depends. I think you can make money year one. We've done it before and it's doable, but
it's more of what you do with that money. So even if you make the money, you don't have to pull it out. You can reinvest. I think you should be reinvesting as much as you can to build that base so that, the money's not made the first few years. The money's made later, and in many cases, money's made on the exit.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, yeah, right. People forget about the enterprise value that they built in a business. I was talking to a business owner that had started building a business. Their first year did well, but didn't make money. They lost money.
Right.
But they were building the bones of the business. And in their regular job, they made a substantial amount of money. And what you have to remember is like, I can't give tax advice, but when you lose money in a business, but you have another income, that loss is a net operating NOI, net operating loss.
Right.
And net operating loss. And it carries over into your taxes. And so if you're making a bunch of money in one place, well, now you're losing money, if you will, as far as your other business, but you're building a business, you're building an asset. You're mitigating tax exposure. And then the next year, when you do build the business further, and let's say you do start to make a profit, which by the way, most business owners, they want to try to have a big profit. But when they do start to have a profit, you're going to be able to get a multiple on that profit, whatever multiple down the road. And so you have to think of it as like enterprise value of what you're building. But I think that the number one mistake business owners make is they start to succeed and then they go buy the boat or they go get the new car. And it's like, no, you should, like you said, reinvest the money into your business for a while.
Do you ever realize that the people that want to make, like, they're like, I need to make this much money first year, they're in a worker mindset.
Yeah.
They don't have a business mindset. So I was having a conversation with someone. It just clicked to me when you said that I was like, oh, have you worked with a franchise consultant in the past? And he was like, yes. I was like, okay, great. Tell me a little bit about what you looked at. And he was really attached to what the business was.
And Joey, we had worked together last year, worked for a major auto company and just needed a change, left the job and, was looking at a franchise business. So really excited. We're doing a 2-part series. We're going to talk about, how he went from employee to employer, exactly what he was looking for in a business and then how things are going now. So very excited for today. So Joey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. I always throw that out there and I know people get busy. So I appreciate the time. And by the way, let's continue these. Maybe we'll do another show a year out from now and see how things are going and progressing. So if you could just, before we dive in, I had some questions I wanted to ask you, book recommendations and things like that. But I wanted to start off, if you can give the audience a little context, a little bio, background information.
Yeah, absolutely, Giuseppe. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Joey Romanchek. I'm the proud owner of Resta Pros of Hudson County. Like a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, I was a corporate exec, so I was a general manager for a large automotive firm. Had done that for a number of years, grew to be a territory operations manager with a large customer service team underneath me. The long and short of it is we helped about 20 different service centers with customer service and customer interactions. I was by all means doing well. I was receiving promotions, getting better responsibilities, increasing my earning potential with the company. But what I didn't have was time. I didn't have time, weekends, holidays, you name it. If you were doing a Memorial Day weekend down at your house, there was no way I was going to be able to attend. So I started to look around at myself and I said, well, hey, I've done well and I've grown professionally, but at the end of the day, I don't have the same time that I wish that I had for things. I started to look at business ownership. I realized pretty quickly that I was in a little bit over my skis as I started to look at different business opportunities in the area. And that's what brought me to franchising. So you and I had plenty of conversations. We had conversations, positive and negatively, about my skills, what works. Is this going to be the one? Maybe this is the brand. And settled on Resta Pros. So we've been operational now for the last, call it 3 months. So it's still in the very early formative days for us, but especially with where I'm at as our business, still very close to the due diligence done to make this decision and some of the early days after having made this decision. And I hope that some of my feedback helps others consider the same thing.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And one thing I'd like to mention, and we talked about this before the show, is, when you talk about feedback, just giving us the journey. It's not this clear transition. It's exactly, this is going to happen and there's never going to be an issue or a hiccup or anything like that. And sometimes the expectations, things exceed the expectations. So I like how you're putting out, I don't know if it's weekly or every other week. I forget the frequency, but kind of an update. How things are going. This is it's a big transition, right? Going from employee to employer. I always say you go from signing the back of the check, your paycheck, to the front of the check. So talk to us a little bit about that transition. Just that's an emotional roller coaster, right? Having that consistent paycheck, responding to the employer. Basically, they're telling you exactly what needs to get done. You're just showing up. So talk to us about that transition. Talking about how that affected your family, your thought process, and what that looked like.
Yeah, it was a decision that I think, okay, let's back up. When you think about the decision to go from the corporate world of having a W-2 job to being a business owner, it is a binary decision where I need to make it, right? But at the end of the day, you're not making this on your own. And I think that was the thing that really helped me. I mean, this decision couldn't have been made without the support of my fiance, without the conversations of my peer advisors, my father, the people in my life who have been a powerful guiding light for me so that I can tell whether or not, even though this sounds good, this sounds like something that we can do, that group advisory is really important to making sure that I'm receiving checks and balances of what I believe is a good decision. Right. I think the first place that I would take this is that feeling in corporate America of being like, whether it is you have a good job that you're happy with, but maybe some of your needs aren't being met. Maybe it's the feeling that you're being compensated or not compensated enough and want a little bit of a change. For me, it was, I said it before, it was time. I was working just about every weekend. Saturdays were mandatory. Holidays were mandatory. And that to me was like the first little nugget of maybe something needs to change here. I want to start working to get a little bit of this time back. And as I continued to grow, I thought to myself, I've experienced a number of promotions, and that's only brought me increased responsibility, but also just like increased time and presence in some of these roles. I was working for a company who, the higher you grew, the more involved and invested in all aspects you had to be. And so for me, the only piece that was missing was the business ownership, because I believed that the better manager I was, the better I could maximize my people, the less I should have tactically that I need to do day to day. And it just wasn't the case. I was very much so like this piece in the machine that had to make certain things go. And when I wasn't there, things weren't able to advance in a way that scaled me out of the business. Even though we all know the best way for an owner to scale out is for getting the right people in. So I wasn't able to make some of those decisions. Having made this and having now been on the other side of it, you're absolutely right. I think some of the early challenges is about taking on and accepting the responsibility that these decisions kind of start and end with me. And the nice thing about the franchise model is you have the support that you need to be able to make that decision in a right way. But as the business owner, the onus of making that decision falls on my shoulders. And I think that's probably one of the harder transitions I hear people talking about when it comes to exploring whether or not the franchise thing is for them. Some of these corporate environments are so structured where you might feel like you're making decisions, but it's really, you've been given it's like the Matrix. You've been given two pills, take this one or this one. Right. Well, in the franchise world, you're suddenly standing like at a pharmacy trying to figure out like, what is the right medicine for me to take for this thing? And so it's a lot of information intake.
Determining the right brand. And, we talked about when we first started working together, there's no exact number because it changes, but we'll say around 4,000 franchise companies and 70 plus industries. So what really stood out about, maybe we'll work in reverse. What stood out about Resto Pros that made you make that decision?
Yeah, well, I guess in the spirit of the conversation, we're talking about decision-making here. So I'll break it down into a few pieces.
Sure.
When we started this conversation, it was a bit of, well, what do I like? What do I not like? What do I enjoy about my previous career? What worked well there? And, what am I looking for in the next thing? And so for me, it was, I would say, three components that I was looking for in a franchise brand, because these three components did not bring me immediately and directly to Resto Pros. Right. It was some level of customer service and experience. So I wanted to be working with people as a strength of mine, and being able to provide customer experience, looking at customer experience processes and figuring out ways to do that better is not only a strength, but something I really enjoy and take fulfillment out of. So I wanted there to be an element of people service. Number two, I guess I kind of said it there, was service. I wanted to provide a service, not a product. And so when we started to look at some of these brands, it was important to me that there was a service that we were providing. I felt like that could give us a bit of a competitive edge in whatever brand it was going to be. And then I would say number three for me was having some flexibility and autonomy to be able to enjoy time with family and friends on holidays. This was something that was so foreign to me. And so I wanted to be able to, at least that maybe it's not the immediacy, but at a point, I wanted to be able to have the comfort where I could enjoy my holidays, and unless there's an emergency, my people as well. We were looking at a couple of different brands. I won't say any of the other brands that I didn't settle on. They were great for their own reasons, but just not for me. I mean, one that we were looking at was very kids and family focused. I'm not a family person yet. I don't have children of my own just yet. It didn't feel like something that would align with me at this point. You know, maybe when I have kids, it'll be something I think about. And to me, the water mitigation game and what I learned in the discovery was it's really a business to business game. You know, we're the basis of a lot of our early sales right now are the business relationships that we're building. And so with that, I was like, okay, now we have something where I can network and improve the potential for more sales. I can bring in people that might be able to help us establish a network. And so really, we don't need to be better at the website optimization, the SEO, some of those, things that happen where we're just waiting on the phone. We can be active about this and just build relationships and hit doors and try to find new opportunities. I like that because that gave me a little bit of control over our early sales, especially being in it in the beginning full time. And so that was really what brought me over to Restapros. But the biggest thing was just being able to service other people. The joys that I got in my previous role were just helping people in a time of need. You know, they either needed a car because of X, Y, and Z. There was some type of issue, and being that person that was able to help them when they needed something done most and be able to handle the problems that they might experience with a transaction like that, I always enjoyed. And so for me, I've gotten a great joy and sense of fulfillment out of helping people that are in my community. I'm walking these streets, I'm running with my dog, and I'm running past your house. So it's great to be able to help and participate within the community. And all those things really helped me settle on what ended up being a really great partnership with the brand I did settle on with Restapros.
Awesome. I love that. You nailed it. I mean, you covered a few things there. We talked about how to win friends and influence people. If you could recommend another book, I know you said you didn't have it on you, but if you could recommend another book to the audience listening, what would that be?
You know, we were talking about it before, but business building and business developing is a new skill for me. It's a collection of a lot of different skills, but looking at building a business and scaling the business that you want is something that is foreign to many people, but also wealth of resources available. I'm going to butcher the author's name. I don't know if I know it. You know it better than me, but you recommended it to me. That's Traction. And that's what's Giuseppe, what's that author?
Gino Wickman. Yeah, Gino Wickman. Yep.
He, beyond just Traction, he does amazing work as far as being able to provide entrepreneurships with resources to make sure that not only are they growing and advancing in their business, but also let's remember that like my business grows and is running at full speed if I am well, if I am right of mind, if I am locked in and focused on not only my business, but my passions and my family. And Gene gives like a ton of resources on why that is so important, especially at this stage. So Traction has been one for me. It's really helped me understand where operationally we need to be focused on right now. And especially because that's really where all my time's going. So when it comes back to the business books, it's going to be that. That's the big one for me right now.
I think they should use that as a textbook in school, in a business related class.
It really should. I think the other one that I would give, and I'm looking at it right now. This one I read in 2023. It's 4,000 Weeks, and it's by Oliver Berkman. 4,000 Weeks. It is a bit of a different look on productivity. I am guilty, as probably many other people, of overstuffing my calendar, my to-do list, and feeling as though I need to maximize every moment of my day. What we don't realize is maximization also happens in the stillness of our days, taking a few moments to just, be here in this conversation versus all of the other things that are going on. whether it's just looking at a study guide from that book or just listening to some of those chapters, I recommend anybody who's thinking about this or who is a high achiever trying to go out there and do some great things in this world, take a beat and read that book.
Awesome. No, it's great. I've never, that one I haven't heard, so I jotted that down. I guess any other piece of advice from someone that's actually done the transition from W-2 to employee to employer? Any other advice? Any other suggestion?
Yeah. This has been one that, unfortunately, there's a lot of layoffs going on, and there's a lot of layoffs happening in my network right now. So I've been getting a lot of people who, in one way or another, whether it's franchising or just trying to figure out what is going to be the next thing that happens to them, trying to figure out what's next. The thing that I find myself going back to when it comes to feedback on franchise or business ownership, even if you're partnering with a franchise, remember, you are accepting the responsibility of business ownership. Right. The franchise has a model, they have a playbook, and they have all the resources as they should, if they're a good brand, to help you maximize your success. But the trick there is maximize your success and not guarantee your success. And so I believe that anybody who's interested in franchise ownership should start with the acceptance of the responsibility that they're now a business owner. And what that means, maybe late nights. What that means, things are going to go wrong. But what that means, and I see you're nodding because you're like, yeah, things are going to go wrong. Like, it just happens. It happens.
It happens. Yeah. It's like part of, it's a business, right? Franchise, business on training wheels, if you want an explanation of what it is.
Right. So. There might be a safety net, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to still fall. And so I think for me, I try to impasse this acceptance of responsibility as the biggest piece of takeaway when it comes to making this decision. Because if you expect it to be easy, it won't. That's a good thing. If you expect it to be easy work and very passive from the beginning, it may, but it also might not. And you got to be ready to accept that. It might take a lot of effort and challenge to get where you want it to be in your mind. That vision isn't going to happen on its own. It's going to take you, the business owner, to make it happen. And so if you just accept that some of those things are going to happen, when those problems happen, you're like, oh, okay, wait. I got this. Right. I accepted this responsibility. So now we're going to make it right. And man, that mindset has changed everything for me, because now when things go awry, which they will, we tackle it, we take it on full steam ahead. And I think sometimes some of the frustrations of somebody maybe who is in this chair, having made this decision and is wrestling with the other side of it, where maybe it's not working, maybe it's not the right brand, I think comes down to, I thought it was going to work out. I thought this, I thought that. It starts and ends with you.
Well said. And I got to give you credit there.
No one's doing their business right. You know what I mean?
Your ego is not your amigo.
Yeah, like if you've never been in business and you're in your first year of business, like it's not fair to expect you're going to be the best business owner ever, and that's okay. But yeah, the ego gets in the way. Same for franchisors, their ego gets in the way because they start to think, well, like we've been doing this for so long. We actually have we call it like a commandment, but one of our franchisor commandments is they could be right, which is an idea that like that franchise owner could be right. Let's make sure we're actually listening to them, but then we expect them to also listen to us.
Yeah. No, for sure. One thing that you said was about, we'll never get there without doing it this way. I hear that sometimes where someone is like, oh, I don't need a franchise. I can just make my own burger place. I'm like, yeah, you don't need McDonald's. You could do Bob's Burgers. But do you really want to come up with the branding, all the ads? Like, I don't think you realize how much work is involved. Like, of course you could do it. You're smart. You're capable. You're an executive. Like, if you want to do all that work at this point of your life, go for it. Then you could do it.
One other thing I want to add too, where when I hear people complain, is that the idea of semi-absentee ownership, where they're keeping their job and then they're running the business on the side. And I said there's a couple components there. Obviously, the franchisor has to allow that, but people are hiring managers that they've never owned the business. They're hiring managers, but they're not managing the manager. There's no oversight, so they're assuming the manager is doing what they need to do, but they're not checking in. They're not doing the weekly in-person meetings or calls and stuff like that. And if they are, like I did with my business, and a mistake I made many moons ago, 20 years ago, was I bottlenecked the business. So the manager, every big decision had to get approved by me. Well, who the heck was I to approve it when my manager had more experience in years I was alive at the time.
Yeah.
So I became a bottleneck. So the big part is finding a franchisor that will support and allow part-time semi-absentee ownership. But on the flip side, when you bring that person on, maybe they have some underlying equity, some phantom equity, so they have some skin in the game. They're getting a cut of some of the profits, but you're also managing and setting the expectation. This is what I need you to do. These are the decisions I need you to make. These are the hours I'm available, because if you have a job, obviously, and you can't talk in the hours of 9 to 2, 9 to 3, or even 9 to 5, they know when to contact you and what decisions you can make. So I believe it's both. It's the right person and expectation, and finding the right franchise that would support that type of ownership.
I mean, and just for obviously for your listeners, they know your background, but you owned a cleaning company. Like, what can you just give the background real quick, just for my audience?
Yeah, we had commercial building maintenance, commercial cleaning. I ran the business full time to really scale that business, and then after that first year, brought on that manager. It was an operations manager, general manager. I forget what the actual title was, but I was so tight to the business. I touched every part of the business. I had to finalize every decision. So I had brought a manager, and by the way, my background was on Wall Street, and we owned the restaurants. I had no experience in that industry whatsoever. Yeah. So I brought an experienced person to the table, a GM with 20 plus years experience in that business. But yet I had to okay all his decisions to the point where, he wasn't able to do his job. It became kind of a bottleneck. So I was running it semi-absentee, but not allowing the manager to do their job, on a daily basis. So it was an interesting business. I learned a lot. I learned that you can't be the expert in all areas, and that you need to hire people that are better than you in certain areas, at social media, at marketing, at sales. So I learned a lot in that business, and I do a lot of learning. So I try to bring that experience to the table and helping people to find a franchise.
It's interesting. What you did, though, is you got in the business, you learned it, and you grew it. When I think of my definition of semi-absentee, first of all, is it's a hockey stick, right? And so when you start a business, your revenue is the lowest, you work the most, it's the worst time. But as you grow the business, the revenue goes up, and then your time goes down.
Right.
But this idea that you're not going to work in the business and the revenue is going to go up, I've never experienced that in a business. And I think that you have to be involved. Like, example, I'm not as involved in the day-to-day of Voda as I was even 6 months ago.
Right.
It took time to get there. And my definition of semi-absentee isn't that now I'm going on the beach drinking Mai Tais and hanging out. If I'm not in the office on a Monday through Friday, then I'm out doing something to generate revenue or recruit people. Now, sometimes that might mean going out to play a round of tennis and Friday afternoon.
Networking.
With a property manager, a plumber, a consultant, a potential teammate. That is the job of the business owner. But I always thought of semi-absentee means like you're not in the day-to-day, so you can go out there and be what we call the mayor of the town.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.